Hi, Dr. Rahman.
Hey, Dr. Pajic.
How are you today?
I'm doing well.
Well, thank you for coming on for our deep dive. I love doing the deep dive because I really get to walk inside your brain and unpack a complex topic.
Okay.
Today's topic is going to be uh, what parents can do to manage social media in their children's lives. And first, for the folks that are listening, I want to introduce you a little bit. You are a child and adult psychiatrist. You work here at Atlas Psychiatry, and you also have worked and continue to work at Children's Hospital. You've done that for many years, and you're also program director, assistant program director at LSU.
Yeah, part of the assistant program director, pretty involved with the Child and Adolescent Fellowship over there. So still teaching didactics over there for medical students, residents, fellows, the whole gambit.
The whole gambit. And how long have you been practicing from residency onward, would you say?
It's 2014.
24. Oh, okay. Wow. Well, there you go. So you are an expert in child and adolescent and adult psychiatry. And one of your expertise is in social media and how it affects children. So what's the status of that now?
Well, it's kind of all over the place, honestly. There's so much research that's being done on it, and there's a lot of controversy. And it's such a big part of our life, social media, just in general, whether you're a child or an adolescent or an adult, it's embedded in everything that we do. And that's good and bad. And I think that's been reflected in kind of the way we have seen it in child and adolescent psychiatry, because there's lots of groups that are coming out with statements about it. The American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, which is our big governing body for child and adolescent psychiatry, they've put out a lot of statements. The American Academy of Pediatrics has put statements out. More recently, the U.S. Surgeon General put a pretty big pamphlet out, kind of bulletin about it, because it's a topic that has kind of been really seen in mainstream news. And honestly, on the ground floor as a child and adolescent psychiatrist, probably like one of the most common questions I get from parents is like, how do we manage social media? How do we manage the problems and the good? And
so these statements from these agencies, what are they saying in general?
Most of the statements, one of the biggest general themes is there's a lot that has to be looked at research-wise with it. But the bigger thing is there's pros and cons to social media.
Okay, what are some of the pros?
Well, certain populations, it's a really, really great place for them to connect. And one thing that studies have shown is that a lot of minority populations, LGBTQ plus populations, social media serves as a safe place for them where they can talk about different struggles that they are having without biased or racism or different factors that make it really hard to talk about those topics in person with people. It's a place of creativity. I mean, if you talk to a lot of child and adolescent patients and clients, they just like social media because it's an outlet. You have musicians putting music on. You have very creative adolescents that put songs on there, graphic design, short films, and then they share ideas. And it's like a think tank for them to be able to connect with other people.
And which platforms specifically would you say that these things are happening on, the positive things that are happening on?
I think it's all different platforms, but I mean, probably the most popular two platforms right now for teenagers and most adolescents are Instagram, TikTok. Some of them also use Discord, which is it's a messaging app that a lot of gamers use. It's a pretty popular one. When I talk to most of the adolescents, they don't really use Facebook as much. I know it's still there. But, it's kind of
it's the Gen Xer one.
Right? Yeah. And so they're like, not so much Facebook. My mom's on Facebook. My dad's on Facebook. I'm not using Facebook. So not so much that, but there's also new ones that pop up. And it's honestly also when we use social media, you should think also of the video games, things like
Mhm.
that. They have chat rooms in there. Those are
Mhm.
places where they're also interacting with people
So
too.
then what are some of the cons to using social media in children or
Well, that's
children?
a good question because these are the ones that we've kind of seen in the different things that and cases that I've seen is that there's cyber hate. There's definitely a lot of that. Um, I think there was one study I read that said 2/3 of adolescents had at some point faced cyber hate in some form online. And
Jeez.
that's a really complicated one because the problem with social media and these platforms is one of the big things that they harvest is privacy, you know,
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
with cyber hate, if you can't track who's hating, who's sending these messages or sending the statements or different things to kids and adolescents, that's a really tough thing because
Yeah.
it's also very accessible. You don't have to put a name or a face with the cyber hate, so it could be anyone doing these things of all
Okay.
different ages. So cyber hate, cyber bullying has been very uh, prevalent and
Mhm.
really affected a lot of the clients that we see in child and adolescent psychiatry. Um,
Mhm.
the bigger one that's really, really scary is predatory behaviors because the
Mhm.
person that you are interacting with could say they're a certain age and they could not be that certain age. It could be
Yeah.
an adult, it could be someone in a different country, it could be a lot of different risky things related to that, and there's no way to really verify that.
Yeah.
Uh, and with technology, just in general, you can hide all these IP addresses and things like that, which is really scary. Um, then there's the other things like comparison. I think
Mhm.
there's that natural comparison that social media creates. It's great. Put a great picture of a great trip on Instagram, and it's like, wow, they're living the life. They're being at the beach, and you get different outfits and things like that. But it can be troublesome because a lot of young adolescent females have, and studies have shown, have compared their body image, the clothes they're wearing, the activities that they're doing, to other adolescents online, and that really kind of sets up a really difficult situation sometimes because it can affect self-esteem and other things.
Can you give me an example without revealing anybody's identity of how social media had negatively affected one of your patients in the past?
Yeah, I had a young female adolescent that was struggling with some self-harm, and self-harm is complicated in itself, but there were two problems with that we found out that were related to social media. The self-harm behavior was something that they picked up on social media, and it
And
was
what were they doing? What do you mean by self-harm?
they were cutting, and it wasn't cutting, it was cutting to regulate emotions, and they were
Mhm.
dealing with like some depression and some anxiety, and that's how they were trying to cope with those things. They picked that up because of someone else posting a video about that online.
Mhm.
That spiraled to them trying it and then using that as a maladaptive coping skill. But then also, as we worked with them, we also found out that they had significant self-esteem issues about their body, and that a lot of that was driven by some of the peers that were at their same school that were posting pictures and, like swimsuits and things like that. And they were very hard on themselves about their own body image issues. So it was kind of perpetuating the problem.
So, as their doctor, what do you do in that situation in terms of treatment planning?
No, it's in cases like that, you want like a multifaceted approach. So the first thing was like I had to coordinate care with their therapist because
Mhm.
I had a therapist, but also I wanted to make sure everyone was on the same page. Because
Mhm.
if someone discloses self-esteem issues, it might be very different what they bring up in a session with me versus what they bring up in a session with their therapist. So I think the biggest thing that I had to do first and foremost was get everyone on the same page. Like,
Mhm.
what's coming up in sessions with me? Are you seeing that? And then coming together and trying to approach that. Like, is there underlying depression and anxiety that's leading to it? If that's the case, what are we looking at from a therapeutic standpoint? What are we looking at from a medication standpoint to help those things? And then
Mhm.
building ego strength. Like, we got to build some confidence,
Mhm.
taking away that that situation of comparing yourself and perfectionism and all those things that could be happening with social media to being like, let's start accepting us for ourselves. And like, this is, this is who I am. Let's start building some confidence so that they're not so dependent on those other things.
And how old was this patient around?
They were, I would say, I describe them as like tweens, so younger, teenager, 12, 13 years old.
Okay. Yeah, it's a rough age.
Yeah. And actually, that is the most popular group female-wise on social media in adolescence.
Oh, okay.
14 to 18 is usually the boys. That's the number that usually you see a lot of them start popping up on social media, having those accounts. In girls, it's actually a little bit younger. It's 11 to 13. So
Okay.
it's also, in that particular case, it was like prime time for them because they usually start going on social media at that time.
Is there any different concerns between girls and boys?
I think there's a little more worry about some of the things that you see with females, and like the self-harm is probably a little more prevalent.
Mm-hmm.
Disorganized eating, whether that's, it could be anorexia, it could be bulimia, those things can be popping up on there. I think with the boys, sometimes it's the cyberbullying,
Mm-hmm.
inappropriate messaging,
Mm-hmm.
pranks, things like that. Those things can also be an issue. Sometimes, I've had cases where the boys just don't really even understand the significance. Like, you make a statement about hurting someone or threatening someone, and then, I've, in the acute setting at Children's Hospital, I've had to have conversations like, those things are tracked by other things. Like,
Yeah.
there's people that police all these things, that if you have something worrying, it gets flagged, and then police officers and things can get involved, and that's something that they're not always aware of.
So how does that happen? So if someone says something, I guess, threatening to another person, and they know who the person who made the threat is, the police officers may visit the home?
Yeah, they may
Really?
get a message from the platform, like saying this is something that came up as we were reviewing, and some acute cases I've seen, the situation that brought them to the emergency room in crisis was because the police had showed up at the house because of something they posted on, TikTok or Snapchat, and it got flagged, and the police came and took them as a crisis situation to the emergency room.
Oh, you mean the police then brought them against their will to the emergency room and said, we want this child to be
Evaluate. Mm-hmm.
And in those situations, what do you do for the child? I guess it depends on if they're disordered, like having psychosis or something extreme. But yeah, can you speak to that a little bit? Like,
it just depends on the circumstance that brought them in. Sometimes, I've had some situations where it's like, in the moment of frustration, like a client may have said something like, I'm gonna, hurt myself or harm myself in some way, and then that gets flagged, and then police show up, and then it's more like, was that, what's the intent behind that? Threats to others, like, I'm gonna go there and do something, that has also flagged some clients to be brought to the emergency room. And then, like, some of the more scary cases where they're posting, or there's Snapchats of them, threatening to overdose or take something. Those things then, kind of fall in the realm of that's a suicidal ideation or suicidal. And then, they get brought to the emergency room. And a lot of times with that evidence, they end up getting admitted to the hospital because it's a high risk situation.
And social media platforms, were they designed for both kids and adults to use?
No, and that's one of the biggest things that all these statements have come out, is that the research really needs to keep going on developmentally. How is that affecting children and adolescents? Because all these platforms were made for adults. And the reason is that because all these algorithms that these platforms use, they're not geared towards, they're geared towards users and getting them to engage in content, regardless of the age of it. And so,
Mhm.
also developmentally, just speaking, our brain development as an adult is different phase than as a child and adolescent, um, teenager on there. Their brain is still in the developmental phase. So their decision
Yeah.
making center, all that has not fully matured. But these platforms are all geared towards adults with the assumption that when we have fully matured brains and decision making, and they're not taking that into consideration. So like all these things are designed for like maximize user content and engagement. That's why TikToks, it's like
Yeah.
30 seconds because it's like get the amount of viewers,
And does that simulate, I mean, how do they do that? Like, where do they borrow that algorithm from?
So one of the things that's come out is like they use things called like a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. Very fancy term,
Yeah.
but what it just means is I look at it like this. That's what slot machines use.
Hmm.
So one person uses a slot machine 10 times, they pull it, and then like nothing happens.
Hmm.
And the next person like second time, great, I won a jackpot, and then all of a sudden these variable ratios of the rewards get people to engage in
Ah,
at a
wow.
higher level. And so they're using data like that. They're using uh, popularity and algorithms. I mean, you click on something on a website and then your Instagram immediately is like, oh, here's something similar,
You
Um,
do that to a kid and they can't stand it. They just take the bait every time.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Autoplay, infinite scrolling. I mean, the teenagers always talk about dead scrolling. I mean,
Hmm.
that's what you want as a platform. It's like automatically going to the next video and the next video and the next video.
Hmm.
And so you're maximizing the amount of time they're on it. And that's been a big thing that all these studies are looking at because the American Psychological Association actually, they did a little statement where they saw the average amount of time a teenager was on it was that correlated with a higher rate of mental health issues.
Mm.
At 4.8 hours, average time that a teen stays on any of the 7 popular social media apps
Hmm.
um, tended to connect with a higher rate of mental health
Wow. Okay.
or mental health.
So is there any guideline to what is a safe amount of use per day?
I think a lot of it is dependent on each each family and situations, but
Hmm.
in most of what I've read, if you're spending more than 3-4 hours a day on social media, I can't say that every one of them is going to have a bad outcome, but a lot of the studies are pointing towards you see then that increase in some of the mental health issues like depression, anxiety,
Yeah.
self-harm, things like that.
And can you speak to the difference between using social media and perhaps video games or like watching TV and the differences between those three? And
So I think I mean, when it comes to like TV, Netflix, things like that,
hmm.
a lot of the research is not pointing towards that. I think they're looking more at ones where you can engage with
Hmm.
users. Um,
Hmm.
and so it's more like Instagram, TikTok, Snapchat, and then video games are unique because honestly, what I run to also is that sometimes parents don't understand what you have in the video game. Like, oh,
Hmm.
I didn't know there was a chat feature. I didn't know you could like Call of Duty, very popular game. It's like I didn't know that there's someone's in this and Call of Duty is like a shooter game where they go around and you can play with anyone all over the world.
Yeah.
But there's no real way to uh, kind of control that. Like
Yeah.
people say all these things, adults are saying, oh, you could be paired with an adult as a teenager. A
Yeah.
younger kid could be paired with, someone in a different country, and there's no regulation of those things. And it's kind of surprising sometimes parents don't always know that those features. There's not like a adult features to really restrict that unless they know it, and they do
Yeah.
that on PlayStation 5 or Switch or whatever. They put those in place.
So that's a risk depending on who they're chatting with, perhaps.
Yeah.
And then aside from that, though, is there any guidance on how much gaming is okay to do per day, or is it kind of an unknown thing
That's
now?
kind of unknown, and that's where I
Yeah.
think, a couple of years ago there was a lot of buzz about, is there a correlation between violence and video game? And a lot of that came out when Fortnite came out. It was a really popular game that and that a lot of kids were playing, especially during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of like, is it related to that? There were a couple of statements that came out from different groups that said they couldn't really say it was a direct correlation between
Mm-hmm.
that. That's something I still need to look at.
Yes.
And I think now one of the bigger things that we face is, when you were talking about TV, a lot of the adolescents I see, they actually don't really watch TV. They don't get their news. They don't
Okay.
get any of that from TV or cable, those things. It's YouTube.
Yeah.
Like a lot of it is YouTube, influencers on YouTube, content on YouTube. That's probably where they're getting more of that. And so that's probably more of the hot button one that they're looking at,
Yeah.
because it's just where they're getting most of their information from.
What about during COVID when kids were using Fortnite? I remember hearing lots of boys were using it, and they're chatting with their friends that are strewn throughout the city or neighborhood. Is that experience for those boys negative in the fact that they have trouble socializing in person and developing social skills like in a room with somebody versus being on a game in your house, in your basement?
Well, I think that brought up the bigger topic of what we saw with social media during the pandemic.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's important to know. One of the biggest things that age group, especially 12 through 18, are trying to figure out is identity formation. Like, who am I going to be? How do I fit in? What my personality is. There were already trends that were headed in a certain way before the pandemic. But then the pandemic and the shutdown happened, and we were taken away from all of us were taken away from our social networks. And the biggest one I think that adolescents were taken away from was school. Because if you really sit down and think about it, the majority of the year, kids spend the most time at school. And they're around their peers, and they're trying to figure out, their identity through their interactions with peers. So that was taken away during the pandemic. And there was a heavy reliance, like, how do I stay connected with all these people? And honestly, the world, was social media. And so going back to the question you asked, I think what I came across just in general was that everyone thought it was very positive at that time, because like, I need some outlet to be able to connect to kids my own age,
Right.
my own age, my own friends, because if you can't leave your home or go safely see them because of what was going on at that time, you are losing out on that social part, which is really important at that age.
Yeah. So you think it was kind of a placeholder for the real thing, meaning the gaming, the connecting, social media at that time, whereas now we're in a different time. Would you agree it's better to just do things in person and play outside and in the woods and things like that?
Yeah, because I think at that time it was a great time for, if you're running those platforms, it was great, because to build it and make it even bigger and better. And then what the hope is now that we're out of that time frame, we kind of go back to a little bit more of a hybrid, where we're still going to use social media. We're not going to get rid of it.
Yeah.
And the advances that they've made have definitely pushed it more into the mainstream.
Yeah.
But at the sacrifice of, we're not going out and doing things. And I get a lot of parents coming and say, like, they don't want to leave their room.
Yeah, it's Friday, Saturday night. They're not going out. They're not going to school dance or something.
So your physical health takes a toll when you're not out and being active.
Yeah.
But one of the bigger issues we run into is sleep, because then it's like, Dr. Rahman, like, what do we do? Because they're on social media till like 2 a.m. in the morning.
Yeah.
Or on FaceTime while they're sleeping with their friend, and that's, all these things have now become a big problem, because we have a lot of issues with adolescents and sleep.
It reminds me of that movie Big with Tom Hanks, where the little Tom Hanks and his friend are doing walkie talkies at night before bed. They got to get off there. Such an old time ago. Sorry, I'm dating myself here. Mm,
But now it's you're on there. You're either on a chat room throughout
yeah.
the whole night, or you're on FaceTime with someone, or just an ongoing chat, and that affects. I mean, one of the biggest things is you have to disconnect from those things, electronic devices, because now with the screens being so bright and everything,
Yeah.
it activates your
Oh,
brain,
yeah. Yeah.
and you're not going to be able to go to sleep. But
Absolutely.
there's a reliance on it, and so it's how do we navigate that, and that's difficult.
Do you ever come across kids who are tracking where their peers are, teenagers in the city, because they're sharing each other's location? That whole
Yeah.
feature.
Yes, I've seen that. I've seen
What do you think about that?
it's good and bad because
Uh-huh.
it makes them feel connected, but it could be scary too. And it's interesting too. Even some have said, I had one case where they were very invested in a streak that they were having on Snapchat. It's like, I
Hmm.
have a streak with my friend where we snap each other, and we're now at 63 days straight. And it was like,
What do you mean? What do you mean the streak? Like how many?
how many
Like
days in a row they've interacted with each other
the
through.
thread, and how
Yeah.
much time in between those interactions? Like 24 hours, or it's a.
I think from what they were saying is like they were aware of the streak. They were like, we have to like snap each other a picture once a day.
Oh,
Like,
okay.
and it was like 60 in there, but they were like 63 days. And like we have to keep that. And it was almost, it
A
was
point
like
of
an
pride.
addiction. It was like an addiction because they're like, we have to do it. We have to
That's pretty neat.
um and that's what the other big thing that I think we navigate now as child adolescent psychiatrists is a conversation of when is it healthy. I understand my child needs that to like socialize to some aspect and to
Hmm.
their friends, but when is it skewing over to this is unhealthy, and is this more of an addiction?
Well, what guidance could you give in general to parents for kids about social media?
I think the biggest thing is ask what they're doing. You got
Hmm.
to, one of the biggest things I tell parents too is, and I'm aging myself because when I was in college, it was like we didn't have all these social media. It was just Facebook had just dropped. And
Yeah.
it was like, okay, great, Facebook. And now we have all these different platforms. And a lot of them are newer, and you don't know the full content of what's happening there.
Yeah.
So I think engaging in a conversation with your family about it, especially your adolescents and children. Like, what are you guys doing? Like, what are you watching on YouTube? Can I sit and watch with you on YouTube? I
Yeah.
have a 7-year-old, and sometimes he's earned some YouTube, but I make it a big point to know what he's watching on there,
Yeah.
and it can be as subtle as, look, can I watch whatever you're watching, and
Hmm.
and gauging, is that safe, but also getting an idea, like, if this is what he's watching, then there's probably an algorithm of like other things that he's watching similar to this.
Right.
uh, Now with your older ones, like having a discussion like, look, I understand you want to do what every other teenager wants to do, an adolescent, but we have to have healthy limits. And does that mean us as a family have to
Hmm.
have restrictions on it? Because as an adult, we have to set the example also for our kids. So
Hmm.
if we're on it at night, and then we're telling them you can't be on it at night, they're going to be
Hmm.
like, that's unfair.
Yeah.
So one of the big things that the American Academy of Pediatrics came out with, which is on their website, is there's a family media plan. And
Hmm.
that's something that if that can be helpful for some families, like the whole family disconnects at 9 o'clock. We put our phones in here, and we're all going to do it.
So
And
this is a plan like where you write out what the rules are within the family and
yes,
everyone follows it. And you're saying that that's imperative because the kids will follow what the parents are doing. The parents have to take the lead on the thing.
I think it's collaborative,
Yeah.
because if we say only you can have your phone at 9, but then as an adult we're on whatever and doing
Hmm.
looking at social media, then it sets this like very contentious point that
Mhm.
ends up, I see a lot in the outpatient setting where it's like, well, it's unfair that they're putting this restriction. And it sets up a power dynamic and all these arguments and things like that. I think
Mhm.
you're more likely to get a little bit better buy-in from an adolescent if you're willing to do the work that you're asking them to do.
Okay. Wow, that's tricky. I don't even know if I could do that, man. I
And
listen to
it's tough.
YouTube. I fall asleep to YouTube, wake up at 3 a.m, listening to a 4-hour podcast.
It's tough. And I will say that I actually, when at Children's Hospital, I had myself, my resident, and my med student, we had a case where a lot of it was related to social media. And I was like, we're giving all this advice and saying we need to do this, but we acknowledge this is really hard.
It's hard. Yeah.
So let's us as a team disconnect for 48 hours.
Yeah. Right.
Like, so I didn't do 48 hours of social media. My resident did not do 48 hours of social media. My medical students didn't do 48.
Oh man.
And then we were like, okay, we're going to do it. We're going to come back and we're going to talk about it and see how we felt. And visibly, we could see all of us were like, we're a little bit more irritable. We feel a little more disconnected.
You had withdrawal.
Yeah, and that just validates the point that it's hard.
Yeah.
But if we're expecting that with our kids and on our adolescents and teenagers and our family members, that's a big thing to ask of them.
Yeah.
If we're not also doing that.
When do you think parents should bring their kids in to see you when they're having social media issues?
I think when you start seeing those things that come with it, like increased anxiety, increased depression, it could be more behavioral outbursts.
Mhm.
We're really struggling with, the rules, things like that. But I think the bigger thing is when you're functionally not doing well. If you're
Mhm.
functionally not doing well because of whatever reason, and you think it's related to social media, I think that's when you have to start looking at it because with the way it's set up
Mhm.
and the fact it's not going anywhere, it's only going to get bigger and better.
Right.
If you're having issues with functioning, whether that's school, like sleep,
Mhm.
physical activity, we're seeing like mental health issues starting to pop up,
Mhm.
then I think you have to start intervening then because you're not going to get social media, the big giant of social media, to stop.
And do kids push back on their parents when their parents want to take them to someone like you?
Yeah, they can do that, and they also push back on the idea that they have a problem, and that's the all these studies show that if you ask most teenagers, they have a neutral to positive view of social media.
Say
Some
that
do
again.
have,
A neutral what?
they have a neutral where they feel like it's not good or bad.
Oh, neutral to
Majority,
positive.
yeah,
Okay.
but they have a positive view of social media.
Mhm.
Not many have a negative view of it.
Mhm.
Versus probably if you ask more parents, they have more negative views of it
Mhm.
when it comes to social media for their adolescents.
And we don't really know how any of this shapes a kid's brain
No,
largely. Yeah, right.
no, and that's the big area that most recently the Surgeon General's report that came out from the government says we have to really look at the research about what are the long-term effects from this.
Right.
Because there's already some studies that show that the rates of like social anxiety and things like that have gone up because are we forgetting how to interact with each other in person? Is
Yeah,
everything
right.
through the lens of a phone or an app or something? Because you miss some things like body language, how someone is, their tone, things like that. You miss on some of those things when you're not interacting with someone in person. So there's some things already out there about that, but then I think
Yeah.
the long-term issues are going to be probably where the research is really going to go because this generation that we have now, from birth to now, they've had internet,
Yeah,
social
right.
media, everything, and that's
Yeah.
different than other generations.
Can I ask you some personal questions?
Yeah, let's go for it.
What social media do you use?
Oh, bad habit. I'm an Instagram person.
Oh yeah?
Yeah, and I don't really use Facebook as much anymore either,
Okay.
because honestly, he has the same complaint that adolescents. My mom is on Facebook, and I don't, that makes me feel a certain type of way,
Uh-huh.
and so it's more Instagram and probably
Wh-
TikTok.
And what do you do on Instagram and TikTok? You're on TikTok? That's wild, man.
Um,
That's cool.
Not as much TikTok because that algorithm is a very good algorithm. And I
Yeah,
can
right.
go on that. Instagram, I have a little more restraint. So I do a lot of travel stuff. I
Uh-huh.
mean, I've shared with you, Dr. Pajic, I like to travel. I
Yes.
end up like looking at a lot of that. This is where I need to go for my next
And what was your last trip? I think you
last trip recently was I went to Olympic National Park in Seattle.
nice. And you did
And
a lot of hiking,
I
things
did a
like
lot
that.
of hiking.
Yeah.
So I was on Instagram, like, I want to see the beautiful views, and it made me pick out my trails a little bit
Yeah.
different. And I want that picture. So I
I
own
mean,
up
prior to going, you were on
prior to
Instagram.
going.
Well,
Yes.
I think that's a pro tip where they say half the enjoyment of going on a trip is the lead time to actually taking the trip. So, you know, and that's illustrative of such a point.
Yeah. And
That's
then
that's very
probably
cool.
other guilty pleasure is the sports stuff.
Oh yeah, tell me
Um,
what do you watch?
yeah, ESPN. Olympics trials. I was on there a
Yeah,
lot watching without that. Um,
what
I'm a
sports
big
do you follow on ESPN?
Uh, you name it, I'd probably follow it.
Women's basketball.
Yeah, watched
Caitlin Clark.
probably. I watched Caitlin Clark play probably last night, maybe the night before that.
Nice.
A lot of tennis, golf.
What about soccer, men's soccer?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. That's just in the household because my son is a avid soccer playing young boy, and
Nice.
he's quizzing me on, Dad, do you know where Jude Bellingham, what team he plays for? What team does
Adorable.
what's Mbappe's number for Real Madrid going to
But,
be?
yeah,
He tests me when it comes to those
I
sports.
love it.
So,
All right. What about do you have a favorite New Orleans restaurant? This is just a random question.
ooh, very tough. I consider myself a foodie.
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple of places I go back to pretty frequently. Okay, I mean, go to and then a newer restaurant.
Okay.
I think go to. I like Clancy's.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
yeah, that's just solid and an institution in New Orleans. I like Clancy's.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and probably newer, I would say uh, the new Italian place on Metairie Road, Tana. That was very good. I
Oh, okay. I
really
haven't.
liked that one.
Okay.
That one was a memorable meal recently, I'd say. So those two probably stick
How do you
out.
spell that one? Tana?
Tana, Tana.
Okay. Duly
Mhm.
noted. I'm gonna have to check it out. All
Yeah.
right. What about favorite hobbies that you like to do other than traveling?
Travel, play tennis. I really like tennis. I play just a lot of outdoor stuff, play golf, shoot hoops with my son a lot. Um, and then probably other hobbies, just I don't know. I mean, work is busy. So
Yeah.
when I squeeze those in, I'm pretty content if I can get some tennis,
Yeah,
golf.
and you have a
Yeah.
family, so you're
Yeah.
pretty. What about what would you say the best thing about being a psychiatrist is, in your opinion?
You get to know people's stories, and I don't think you get to do that in all of the fields of medicine. I think you get parts of the stories, but in
Mhm.
psychiatry, you get to really hear you get to build a lot of relationships with families and
Mhm.
clients. You get to know their story. You get to, for better or worse, you get to know their vulnerabilities, their struggles,
Mhm. Mhm.
strengths, their goals, and that's
Mhm.
really unique. And there's not a lot of jobs where you get to get all of that information.
Yeah.
And I think that's unique to us.
Well, fantastic. Thank you for your time and explaining all this social media information and helping parents that are out there. If there are any parents listening and you wanted to have your child or you wanted to consult Dr. Ash Rahman, you can do so at atlaspsychiatry.com. by submitting a new patient request. Thanks again, and we will do this soon again.
Yeah, have fun. Yeah, and you know, keep everyone out there. Social media, keep it to as much as we need to, not too much.
Not too much. All right. Excellent advice. All right.
All
Thank
right.
you. Talk to you soon.
All right. Take care.